r/ask Reddit. How have you seen a person's life be ruined in a single day? We had extended family together for a holiday and everyone was making jokes about how my cousin was late. His mom and dad were involved in the jokes, texting him being upset about how he was late and all. Turns out, someone hit him in a head-on collision on his way over and he died on impact. The police knocked on the door to notify the family like a ducking movie. I'll never forget watching the family crumple to the ground. God ducking, damn it. I am so sorry your family had to go through that. Thank you. Apparently the guy aimed for him on purpose too. So you can imagine how well the family has taken it. An 18-year-old tried to steal a couple bottles of Hennessy from my store. When I confronted him, he swung the bottle at my head and connected. I rolled with the blow so it didn't do much damage. Charged with assault and robbery by my company, violent crimes offender and lost custody of his baby. Edit. Guess I should have said the company I work for instead of my company, as I am no owner. LOL. It's always ducking Hennessy. I've seen like 4 or 5 liquor store robberies. Well, grab and dash type. Not everyone get on the ground. And it's always people grabbing bottles of that ducking mediocre cognac. Edit. Jesus Christ guys. If you really want to know, I've seen it 5 times. And it was black guys twice. A Spanish kid. One was an older white guy. One was a white couple in their 40s. I get it. Henny is popular in the black community. And everyone commenting also wants me to know those types also steal patron. Stop being shitheads. To be fair, an 18-year-old in the US isn't gonna exactly have easy access to all the good stuff. A friend of mine got busted in a drug raid and was caught with half a minivan's worth of weed. Most people measure their weed in grams, some in ounces, a few in pounds. Then there's this dude measuring his in minivans. This dude measures his weed in entire barges full of weed, enough to fund a whole season of Indica racing. I was working in a bank. One day the director fired one of his executives. The whole empty your desk, you're fired speech in front of everyone. The director was furious and the guy seemed entirely destroyed. Then he explains to all that this guy gave his login and password to a friend in another branch. The friend used that login, and others, while doing some kind of credit card fraud. Police arrested her, but lacked evidence against the fired guy, so they just fired him on the spot. Obviously besides losing his job he was also blacklisted to work in banks or finance. I play poker. I once saw a man on my way in betting about 10k all on one roulette spin. He chose red, and lost. He looked defeated. Later that night, a guy at our table told us that he heard the guy on the phone crying in the parking lot trying to explain to his wife that he lost their money. She was screaming and said she wants a divorce. Gambling addiction is sad. Addicts genuinely believe the next turn will be the winning turn. And so they go all in. They believe that if it had been a winning deal, they'd have been foolish for not going all in on getting that payoff. So they just do it. People who work in hotels and casinos have many stories of people who have lost everything and killed themselves somewhere on property. I'm a cook at a small casino. We had 2 suicides off the top floor of the parking structure. The first was supposedly unrelated to the casino, as they said the guy never gambled there and only used the structure to jump. The second was a gambler who went home, then came back to jump. God only knows what went through that poor man's head between leaving the casino and coming back. We had a couple of other deaths at the casino that are not suicide related. We deal with a lot of older customers. I know of one man who closed his eyes at a slot machine and never woke up. There was also a terrible accident with a maintenance worker and a dumb waiter. As a marriage counselor I often see one confession from a partner absolutely ruin their partner's life, future self-esteem. It's heartbreaking. A kid I went to school with and his sister died in a car crash. They were in the car behind the parents' car driving the older sister to her first year of college. Parents made a turn and no longer saw the kid's car behind them. I would say finding both your kids dead is up there. 2 cars. Kid's car behind the parents' car. On a, if I recall the stretch, 2-lane highway. I was working with a guy, 16, one day when he gets a phone call. His dad, mum, brother and sister had gone to pick up the new family car. His dad took a corner too fast and drove straight into the underside of a bridge. Guy lost his entire family in a split second and the only reason he wasn't in the car too was because he was at work. Edit. Wow, this really blew up. Thanks someone for the gold. Though I do feel a bit icky profiting off someone's pain. To answer a few questions. They were in a brand new car. It was officially blamed on excessive speed. The corner was a weird one. You kind of go under the small but solid concrete bridge through a slight S-bend while also going down and up a slight hill. Not really dangerous unless you're speeding. I don't know what happened to the poor guy. This was approx a decade ago and I was only a teenager myself. I just remember never seeing him at work again. There are newspaper articles but I'm not sharing because they name names and I don't want to dox the poor guy or myself. That's the shit my nightmares are made of. I couldn't care less what happens to myself, since I don't really have the will to live. But if my entire immediate family died before me, well, I'd basically be dead myself. I don't think I could survive that kind of trauma. My neighbor knocked on the front door early one morning. We'd never met. He introduced himself and wanted me to know why there might be a lot of cars parked in front of the house. All 3 of his children had died in a car accident the night before. Someone baked this guy a casserole or something. That one ducking hurts. The fact that he was still worried about your parking situation and the curiosity you may have, to me, speaks volumes about him as a person. Dude probably wanted any reason in the world to leave his house. One guy I knew found out that he was going to be a father on his graduation night. He was 17. And he looked absolutely destroyed. To be fair, a lot of people waste their 20s with booze and bullshit anyway. This kid will be done raising his child by the time he is 35. If this is any kind of kick in the ass to get him on a good, productive life path, his life isn't over by any means. Speaking as a teen mom, your points are valid. The economic realities of being a teen parent are hellish though. And I don't think people really realize how hard it is to provide for a kid when you're still a kid yourself. My sons are 5 and 4. I'm 24 now. And we're still dirt poor. It's going to take a long time for our family to recover economically from the way the boys have limited my and their dad's earning potential. Edit. Guys, I'm not saying it's the kids' fault our earning potential is limited. Believe me, as a resented daughter, I will never resent my sons. My meaning was that having the boys directly led to our earning potential being limited. I am well aware it was my decisions that led to our situation. I'm not bellyaching or playing the martyr. I'm advocating a realistic view of teen and youth parenting. One of my friends was playing online with me when I hear a knock on his door through the mic. His parents walk in and decide to tell them that he is adopted and that they are getting a divorce. All in one go. No emotional breaks or anything and my friend just breaks down over the mic as his parents walk out. Hey man. I know this is a bad time. But we need heels. On a serious note, I hope he is doing alright. Quite the wombo combo to lay on a kid. That ain't Falco. They ain't his parents. Ooh. Yep. At least several times a month we had to take care of a family who learned that their child had cancer that day. Pretty terrible life-altering news. I spent a lot of time distracting kids with board games coloring while their parents were talking to doctors, crying, and then amazingly pulling it together to continue on. My parents talked about this day for me. I was diagnosed with leukemia when I was between 3-4 years old. It was a misdiagnosis, but they said they thought it was a death sentence and it was horrible. I knew a guy who, within the same 24 hours, learned that his wife of 7 years was pregnant with someone else's child. His wife was filing for divorce, and she was going to try to get their house to herself because she was the primary signer on their mortgage because his credit wasn't so hot. That was brutal to see. Duckin' A. Damn. I hope that dude is doing okay now. Dunno. Haven't talked to him in a long time. We weren't really friends or anything. Just someone I worked with. I hope he is too. That shit was rough. A girl in my class got caught with a thermos full of vodka and when the teacher caught her, she got sent to the principal's office. Well, when the principal asked her why she was drinking, the girl told him that she had been sleeping with the school resource officer. Dude was a cop stationed at the school having sex with a 10th grader. Got dragged out of the school by officers that worked alongside him. At the court hearing they found out he was having sex with 2 more girls at the school. His wife and 2 kids were in the courtroom to support him because he told them he was innocent. That kinda caved when one of the girls had a video of the 2 of them having sex. Our former SRO is now dating a former student who is the same age as me. We graduated in 2015. He left his wife and kids for her. We all shuddered when we remembered how often she was in his office during the school day, having lunch, hanging out, whatever. When I was about 13 I was talking with my best friend at a playground on a hill. Suddenly this lady comes racing down on her bike. She's not wearing a helmet, which was unfortunate because her bike slipped from underneath her and she goes flying. Smacks her head into a corner. I was too young to know this at the time, but I'm almost certain she died instantly. Wear a helmet. My daily commute takes me past a local skate park. Nobody wears a helmet, let alone any other kind of protection. I can't wrap my head around it. Do people think they look cool or tough because they don't wear a helmet? When I was growing up, a kid on my street fell off his longboard backwards and cracked his skull open. Months of recovery, if not years. Obligatory. I love helmets. I can't wrap my head around it. That's because you wear a helmet. It stops your head from wrapping around things. Yup, and I did it. Boss hadn't produced kiddie porn. It disturbed me so much I spoke with a friend who was a desk SGT the town over and asked what could be done. He passed word along to the chief of the town where it was happening. 2 days later the biggest cop I've ever seen walked through the door of our shop and asked to see everyone's id, cuffed and stuffed. You should have seen his face when I was summoned to testify at the grand jury hearing. Edit. This whole thing has been sort of cleansing for me. I've never spoken about it to anyone other than my wife, who supported my decision to become a jobless college student with a family and mortgage. Thanks for the honest and kind words. The most important edit. Those of you saying I'm a hero. I'm not, I'm just a person. The real heroes in this thread are the ones that lived through situations like this and continued on. Maybe reach out to some of them and ask if they're okay. Let them know that they are important, respected, and most of all a valued member of our community. I keep getting asked how I found out, and I've answered it on a few occasions and got a bit rude to one individual. Apologies. I was approached by the victim and they asked for help. I helped. He did it to himself. Thank you for acting on what you found out. Anyone that wouldn't act on this is not human. I feel like I have PTSD from this whole thing. As to this day it still really bothers me, and it was over 20 years ago. This was a few years ago. I work in a hospital. Got notified a large trauma was coming in. A minivan got struck by a drunk driver with the grandpa, aunt and 3 kids under 10. The aunt survived. The kids came to my hospital. 1 dead on arrival and the other 2 we couldn't save. Kept them on life support until the parents got there to say goodbye. I'm always going to remember the sound of the mom singing to them. She lost all her kids and her dad in 1 day. Ugh, this happened near Toronto. I remember this. What a tragedy. Rich guy gets drunk and kills this family. Edit. https://Toronto. Cita News. Car the 20th of November 2018. Marco Muzzo denied parole. A deep dive into the board's decision. Did he get life? Edit. Well shit. Have a friend whose boss got into a gnarly car accident a week ago. Today she was officially told she's paralyzed from the waist down. She was also notified today that her husband died, non-car accident related. I don't know exactly why he passed, but to go from a happy life with your soulmate to not being able to walk and have your life partner is something I can't imagine recovering soon from. That's literally the stuff of my nightmares. My stepdad's life was ruined the day his son, my brother, died. He couldn't cope with the loss, couldn't comprehend the rest of us were hurting just as bad, and turned even deeper into the alcohol and became even more emotionally abusive. Couple years later, when he forced my mom to choose him or me, I watched her make the hardest decision I've probably ever seen her make. She walked away from her husband, the love of her life. Edit. My mother and I no longer have much of a relationship. She made the right choice for the wrong reason. She has point blank told me she regrets having me. My stepdad is, as far as I know, still drunk off his ass and living alone. My mother is alone and living with regrets. As for me, I'm still healing from the scars but mostly doing okay. Edit 2. I am still processing my mother's words. I do not take the blame she tried to place on me. I do not feel that I am a mistake. I know that her feelings problems are not my fault. I know I am here for a reason, even if I don't know what it is. Every part of this is heartbreaking. I'm sorry, and I hope you guys all get to a better place. Last I heard, they are both leading pretty sad and lonely lives. Haven't heard from my stepdad since we moved out. Haven't talked to my mom in recent history due to the whole I regret having you conversation. As for me, I'm doing okay now. Was left with some pretty deep scars that I'm still working through or trying to at least, but I've come to terms with the fact that some of them will never heal. I had a former colleague who was doing his residency in general surgery. He had just started his 5th and final year of training. One day, in the middle of a surgical case, the police show up at the hospital for him. A tech pulled him out of the OR, and he was arrested right there on the spot in front of everybody. Still in most of his surgical attire, he had to do the walk of shame through the entire hospital, in handcuffs and or scrubs. Turns out his ex-wife had gone to the police claiming that he had molested their children. The children testified to this effect as well. All of us were blown away. This was the sweetest, most cheerful guy ever. Nobody thought him capable of something like this. Sure enough, it came out several months later that the kid's statements were coerced and that his ex-wife falsified the whole thing. It wasn't the first time she had attempted to screw him over, but it was definitely the most successful. Dude's career and life were ducked. There's crazy X, and then there's straight up evil X. Do you know if she got in trouble for lying? Sounds very similar to what happened to those lacrosse players at Duke a while back. Doing an MRI on a 33-year-old healthy man because he was a bit dizzy and finding a golf ball tumor in his brain. Read the radiology report. Google type of tumor. Finding only 5% survive. Edit. I should also say that I do a lot of 30-something-year-olds who come in for head issues and almost every single one of them are fine. Is that 5% survival for people with that type of tumor due to being unidentified until after death, or 5% survival after being diagnosed? Most likely 5% survival rate 5 years after the diagnosis. That's how survival is often quantified in medicine. I grew up best friends with my sister, and one day she didn't come home from work. I was 16 at the time. She was 22. I heard my parents start to rumble around the house, turning the lights on, and I could hear more commotion and panic. The cops had called our house cause they found my sister's car damaged on a street in the middle of a neighborhood with the driver's side door still open, and they found one of her shoes was in the middle of the street. The next morning, still no sister. She worked as a bartender. She left work that night and some guy followed her, sideswiped her car, and when she got out to swap insurance he kidnapped her and put her in his truck and drove off, and that night continued to rape and abuse her and held her captive through the night and into the next day. My sister managed to escape that next day and run to the nearest house, banging on the doors. The homeowners let my sister in and called 911. They could tell she had been beaten and attacked. She was taken to the hospital, which is when we got the phone call where she was. She had 2 broken ribs. Her face was nearly black and blue, both black eyes, and scratches all over her body. After that I've never had my sister back. She survived the attack, but she suffers horrible anxiety and panic attacks. She can't go out in public alone. She drinks heavily and is terrified to move out of my mom's and live alone. IDK. I just used to look up to her, and we would laugh and watch movies and bounce on the trampoline, and she would drive me to try our local food chains, and we would listen to music, and ever since I've never had my big sister back. I'll always love her, but it breaks my heart. In one day her life changed for the worst. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.